Well, in spite of the threats, though, a lot more young ones are training to take up a profession in journalism. How do they feel when they hear these reports? I've got the SRC president of the Ghana Institute of Journalism, Joseph Agbezuke, in the studio for a conversation. Hello, Joseph, and many thanks for your time.
Hello.
So you may have heard Amal Clooney there talking about a fund that they're setting up to protect journalists, essentially. When you hear some of these stories or instances of threats against journalists, how do you feel as a budding journalist?
I think that some of these things put a lot of students off the track of following or pursuing journalism. You know, at younger ages, you see, you hear of journalists making progress here and there, and you want to be like them. But when you come to school, you're taught that a lot of things, or you're exposed to a lot of things that happen to these people who try to foster peace or even check on the government to make sure that things are working properly. So a lot of us are forced to switch to entertainment, sport, and other areas and leave the mainstream, which are political issues, of which we think that attacks come from that angle.
Really?
Yeah.
Is it because of people who choose to go that route? Is it because they're often attacked, or because it's more difficult than entertainment and sports, which is arguably less stressful?
Yeah, so when you go to school, there is an area which is called investigative journalism.
Yeah.
And a lot of students shy away from that area.
Why?
Because they think, from what they have been exposed to, some of these people who pursue these courses are either murdered or harassed or put into bad conditions. Okay. So a lot of students don't want to go through that stress. They want to find the easy way out. So they rather prefer shifting to the other areas.
I see. Interesting. So, I mean, I'm sure you've been following some of the incidents here in Ghana. The latest being, you know, the modern Ghana journalists whose offices were stormed into by national security. You know, some say they were assaulted. What's your reading of all of this?
To an extent, I think that indeed, in a human society, there are some people who want news to be suppressed. There are some people who don't want certain things to God because it probably doesn't favor them. So they'll find ways and means to silence you. But in as much as that happens, I also think that we should look at the ethical aspect as journalists. What you are putting out, do you have the veracity of the content? If what you are putting out there can be proven even in the court of law, then you are free to go. You are free to even publish. But if you think that what you are publishing is questionable and you may not have some answers to some of the questions that may be raised, then you have to refrain from even putting it across in the first place. In the first place, I think that storming into the office and then harassing these journalists and even kidnapping them of assault to an extent is not the right thing to do. You can just invite them to wherever the station is and then make your inquiry, but storming in there for harassment, even making it public to an extent, is really not good for us.
There are others who argue that journalists in Ghana, we have so much freedom. I mean, this is just a storm in a teacup. How do you feel when you hear such comments?
Yes, to an extent, I agree. I think that even though there is press freedom, this freedom is not absolute. As journalists, you are expected to be responsible to society. And if you fail to be responsible to society, there should be someone or there should be persons who hold you responsible for your actions. So to an extent, journalists and media persons should understand that even though there is something called press freedom, this freedom is not absolute. You should be ethical and professional in your dealings.
I see. So what if you're ethical and professional in your dealing and still facing attacks?
The fact on the ground is that in every human society, there will always be someone who will be antagonistic, especially when it hits on their nerves. So I think that even as journalists and media houses, there should be mechanisms that will safeguard persons who work within such jurisdictions.
Mechanisms such as what?
If we would have to employ certain security means to ensure the safety of journalists, it's fine. I think that it is not wrong for a journalist, even to an extent, to go in hiding. Because that is a safety measure. You know that you live in society, and by hook or by crook, even outside the media landscape, people attack people, even in their workplaces. So you should have some safety precautions, so that in case something happens, because we live in a human society, you can find a safe haven for yourself.
Okay, let's talk about the larger picture. How do you think all of these reports of attacks on journalists, and you know that recently the rankings on the World Press Freedom Index has dropped.
Yes.
And how do you think this generally reflects on our democracy?
I think that when we go worldwide in terms of our democracy, once the ranking has dropped and once a lot of people have been exposed to the fact that Ghana is becoming hostile to journalists. It doesn't speak well of us if you're talking about democracy. We can't boast of it when we go out there, because people refer to the fact that just recently you dropped, this case happened, that case. So worldwide, it is not good for our democracy if indeed we want to strengthen it.
I see. Yes. And what do you expect? You're a budding journalist, you'll be coming into the world of work. What do you expect to see from government to ensure that journalists operate within the limits that they ought to operate and in freedom?
I think that government should not only, just as has been said, be paying lip service to the so-called freedom. If there is something wrong and a journalist brings it up, the government should safeguard the safety of the journalist. It shouldn't be that because you've exposed corruption, who else is there to expose corruption if not the media? Because you've exposed corruption of the government, you are being attacked. No, there should rather be mechanisms put in place to safeguard journalists, even by the government, so that in case, if there are situations whereby the journalist is finding himself in trouble, the government can safeguard. Else, we'll always be thinking that the government has something to hide.
I see.
And once we have that thought, we'll always be pursuing the government to bring out that thing that it is hiding.
All right. Hold on for me, because we are joined on the line by editor of The Finder, Elvis Darko. He joins us on the phone to share his experience with us and share with us what can be done to make sure journalists in Ghana, operate safely. Thank you very much for your time, Elvis. How do you do? Hello, Elvis. I don't think we have Elvis on the line. We'll work on the line.
I can't hear you. The line is very faint.
Oh, can you hear me now, Elvis?
But it's very faint.
It's very faint. Okay, let's try one more time. Good morning to you and welcome to News Desk.
Hello?
Hello, can you hear me, Elvis?
A bit okay now.
Okay, good. So we're talking about press freedom in Ghana. And I was just discussing with my young budding journalist here in the studio that our rankings on the World Press Freedom Index has dropped significantly, and that is a poor showing for us in terms of democracy. What are your thoughts on that?
The attacks on journalists and press freedom.
Our rankings on the World Press Freedom Index has dropped. How does this reflect on our democracy in Ghana?
Well, the ranking sends a signal that obviously something is going wrong about journalism in Ghana, especially the right to free expression by professionals. Because the moment you drop on the ranking, you should understand that it is because the practitioners have come under a certain form of attack or persecution, you call it. And for me, it was not surprising, especially when you look at the gruesome murder of Ahmed Suwali. And that is a very, very important thing that we must all not forget, that if a journalist dies, and as we speak, we cannot tell whether he was killed because of his job or for any other reason. We can only conclude that he was killed because of his job, because we know that he's engaged into undercover journalism. And for such a person to be killed, definitely it's a strong signal that something is wrong with our country in terms of journalism. And therefore, the drop in the ranking should be a signal to all of us, state actors and non-state actors, to work together to ensure that incidents that have resulted in us dropping in that ranking will be kept, so that we can go back to our #1 position, at least in Africa. Because it is very important for a democracy that people will be entitled to right to free expression. Without it, a democracy cannot thrive. So as we make all these efforts, if journalists will be attacked in this country, as we have seen in recent times, the rising numbers of attacks on journalists by security forces, people who have some vested interest in governance, and all kinds of people, it's not a good thing. I think that it calls for urgent steps by Ghana Journalists Association, the media owners themselves, and the government itself, coming together and finding solutions to this problem, so that at least we can safeguard our reputation.
You're an editor of a major newspaper, so let me put it to you. What steps can we take to safeguard or protect journalists in Ghana?
the first step is for the security agency or the state to show that anybody who attacks a journalist will be dealt with ruthlessly. When that message is sent, I believe that those who have the intention to do that will refrain from it. But then when we see attacks on journalists and we don't see an end, a definite end to the case, and it keeps hanging, then it's definitely a problem. So I think that the critical work, the onus lies on the state to send a strong signal to people who attack journalists that this will not be tolerated. If that strong signal is sent to the Ghanaian public, then we will be making some effort. As we speak, the Ghanaian journalists who had a fracas with the police, the IGP told us that they have set up a committee to investigate the circumstances, and the committee is supposed to present their report in 2 weeks. As we speak, it's past 2-3 months. I am yet to hear from the IGP what his committee has found and what punishment, if any, will be meted out to the officer. It said once the officer was taken to court and was fined 600 cedis for the traffic offense and not the assault on the journalist, it seems to have ended the case. And that is not the way. That is not a good signal, because then everybody thinks that I can attack a journalist and nothing will be done to me. So I think that the key is, number one, the state must send a signal. The media owners should be ready to support their employees by suing the individuals and state institutions that attack their journalists. It's very critical, because when the criminal process fails you, you can resort to civil action. But the question is, how prepared is the media to stand by its journalists and make sure that it's able to go through the legal process to sue an institution that has attacked that journalist? That is also critical. And we as practitioners ourselves, I think that we need to have more training on security tips, how we can also take care of ourselves in terms of our personal security. Because you realize that, I have realized that some of the things that end up being an attack on journalists, sometimes with a better understanding of security, we ourselves can refrain from certain things that will protect us at a point. Because at the end of the day, it fails you, and you are not able also to take actions that protect yourself from certain situations, then you are the one that is going to suffer the circumstance. So I believe strongly that we need to do this, and the Journalists Association should be ready to also get lawyers to support journalists to sue state institutions that actually infringe on our rights. I think that when we take this three approach at the same time, I think that we can make some progress.
All right. Thank you so much for your time. That's editor of the Finder newspaper here in Ghana, Elvis Darko, with those thought-provoking recommendations there. But let's get on the line again and speak to Kingsley Uranta. He's the assistant manager of Channels Television in Nigeria. He joins us on the phone with some experience and perspective from his home country. Many thanks for your time, Mr. Uranta. So shed some light on the environment in which your colleagues, journalists, operate in your country.
Well, thank you so much indeed. My great pleasure to be on your station in Ghana. Of course, we operate in a democratic setting, having fought hard to entrench democracy since 1999. But as you would imagine, and as it is in other parts of the world, journalists should be the ones that speak to power, that would ask critical questions, that would help the people to hold governments to account, that should be truthful, factual, unbiased, balanced. These are the ethos of the profession, and these are the things journalists all over the world should work with. In Nigeria, these are the ethos we work with. But as you would imagine, as in other countries, when you speak to power, when you ask critical questions, chances are that the authorities that do could turn against you. And so, you as a journalist is an endangered to see professionals walking through landmines. But that wouldn't stop you from telling the truth and helping the people to hold government to account keeping democracy, freedom of expression. That is the condition in which we work here in Nigeria.
Right.
We are politicians, yeah.
Right.
Politicians would want to have the stories told in their favor and reports told in their favor. But of course, we've come a long way, and so we try to keep our ground and make sure that...
Mr. Oranta, I'm interested in knowing the kind of threats journalists in Nigeria face. We've heard reports of, assassinations, kidnappings. What kind of threats do journalists in Nigeria face?
Oh, well, for me, there are a couple of challenges. The one that's called the internal threats, which, of course, would range from ownership interests. So a number of media house owners are politicians or related to politicians who ultimately would like to determine the broad lines of policy in the organization. This often comes to bear in the editorial judgment exercised by some journalists and the manner in which information is relayed by social media houses to the public. That's a threat to the existence of real journalism. We also have what I can call personal threats. Some journalists are pressured by family and friends to live up to the standard of their colleagues in other more lucrative jobs and may compromise in order to achieve such status. We also have economic challenges, economic threats, ethical and economic issues from the common challenges or threats that affect the practice of journalism in the country. Some media houses do not say their part, and this has led to what they call the brown envelope syndrome, which is acceptance of money to gain objectivity for pecuniary gain. There's also the government regulation. Journalists are sometimes harassed by government for carrying stories they consider offensive to them. There have been cases of media houses and journalists who have had their operations crippled because their stories are considered unfavorable, to government. So there are quite a number of other threats. Yes, security, high rate of insecurity. Journalists are not insulated, as you imagine, from the growing insecurity in Nigeria. Our colleagues have been killed, some kidnapped, others are missing in action. Another threat for me would be lack of public trust. A combination of factors affect the fake news, shoddy reporting, partial reporting, inaccurate information. All these have made the Nigerian public generally wary of trusting journalists, And of course, what I may also call the news industry regulation. It's easy to be a journalist in Nigeria because membership determines mode of practice, discipline of every member, basically, are not quite stringent. There are no consequences for violating the journalist code of conduct, So that for me would be series of threats, that affect the practice of journalism in my country.
And Kingsley, you've listed, cataloged a myriad of threats, facing journalists in your country. Are there any interventions either by, your mother organizations or even government to deal with these threats and ensure that journalists operate in a safe haven?
Well, I think that the Nigerian Union of Journalists, of course, trying to protect the activities of and the operations of journalists in the country. There were issues that, issues around security or journalists who are owed salaries or who have been detained and all of that. They have always stood up to voice their concerns and try to get to the government to look at the issues. The Nigerian Guild of Editors also, does that. The Newspapers Proprietors Association of Nigeria, would always do that. But of course, these people can only fight, but I'm afraid they can't really fight. It's only to appeal to the conscience of security agencies and governments and all of that. But much more importantly for me would be the individual organizations. What are they doing to protect the interests of their journalists? How secured are they? How equipped are they? Your respondent earlier on was talking about, the fact that journalists have to be protected and owners of media have to be sure that they provide the enabling environment for journalists to do their work. One, they have to be secure, they have to be safe, they have to be comfortable, so that they don't fall prey to these politicians. Because as one of the world-acclaimed musicians would say, Bob Marley, he said, never you allow a politician to grant you a favor, because he will only turn around to want to control you. So if media owners are able to provide for them and train them, train and retrain, and inculcate the issue of being sincere, of being diligent, of integrity, and all of that, I have a feeling that something good might come up out of it. But right now, the struggle continues. But it's also available all around the world, where if you're a journalist and you're outspoken, chances are that you'll be on hands with. Assange, for me, is a typical example of a journalist whose voice is in silence.
All right. Thank you so much for your time. That's Kingsley Uranta. He is Assistant Manager at Channels TV in Nigeria. Thank you for your perspective on that. I'll give you the last word, Joseph. You've heard Elvis earlier, and you just heard Kingsley, talking about the threats that journalists face. How does it make you feel knowing that you are going into this world of work?
One thing I've learned is that if you're not courageous enough, you can't be a journalist that affects change. So even though these threats are known to me, I should be able and ready to face them.
Right.
And I should be able to employ means that will make me escape some of these threats. Some of them will come to even unaware. But I just have to safeguard myself to be able to run away from these ones. And I also want to say that until we have a scapegoat, someone who is prosecuted for attacking a journalist, a lot of people may not shy away from attacking journalists.
I see.
So once we have a scapegoat, someone that the government or any state agency deals with for attacking a journalist, then we cannot have a free press, as we call it.
All right. Thank you so much, Joseph. He's SRC President at the Ghana Institute of Journalism. He joined me for this discussion. And thank you so much once again.